Morning, everybody. You can tell a lot about a gift by the way it's wrapped. But do you know how you can tell more about a gift? By unwrapping it. Believe it or not, including today, are 7 Sundays until Christmas. So if you think it's crazy that we are starting an Unwrapping Christmas series, I just want to give you that information. For 6 Sundays, we are going to be in this series. On the 7th Sunday, we don't meet at 8:30 and 10:30. We just meet together for carols, and then Christmas is here. Christmas is synonymous with gifts, and rightly so. But a gift must be unwrapped in order to be received. I learned this one Christmas when I was 13 years old. I'd turned 13 a month before, and to mark my transition out of childhood, I'd been able to pierce my ears, and I was hoping that now that I was a young lady, that maybe my 16-year-old brother would stop teasing me, that maybe we could have a relationship that was a little bit different, a little bit more grown up. And so I decided to buy him his favorite sweets for Christmas. It was time for us to start gifting each other. To my delight, when I looked under the Christmas tree, there was a gift there for me from him. It was quite big though, and I got suspicious. And so when everybody was asleep, I crept downstairs and lifted the gift to see whether the weight was just a cardboard box or more. It was the weight of just a cardboard box. So obviously I shook it, and there was no sound. I smelt it, and there was no smell. And I realized with disappointment that this gift was most likely just another joke, just another tease. And so I did what any self-respecting 13-year-old would do. I unwrapped his Christmas gift, ate all the sweets, put pebbles in the packets, and wrapped it back up again so that I would have one up on him. I would be able to be smug on Christmas morning because his was an empty box. Mine, he would think until he unwrapped it because it was full of stones that there was something in it. Christmas morning arrived, and he gave me his gift first. And I unwrapped it and looked inside the empty box and said, I knew there was nothing in here. And he said, no, look more carefully. I looked more carefully, and there was definitely nothing in the box. He said, look under the cardboard flap. I looked under the cardboard flap, and there was a pair of silver earrings. And it was a funny gift to receive because first of all, I realized that I needed it more than I knew. Secondly, it was incredibly humbling because I had nothing to give him. When we unwrap a gift, we get to understand that it's perhaps not just all about the packaging. It's not just frills and ribbons and wrapping paper, that perhaps there's something of substance to it. There is a possibility that we need it more than we know. And there's a possibility that receiving it might be very humbling. I once got a card at Christmas time, a flyer at the Robot that said, Merry Xmas, but who is Mr. X? And the thing is, there are these parallel festivals around Christmas time. There is Xmas, which is a secular commercial festival that is all about spending a lot of money, and it's going to stay because of its commercial indispensability. That Xmas festival is going to stay. At the same time, there is this beautiful Christmas festival that also both have lights, both have gifts, both include kindness to the poor. There is this similarity. There's this moment when what the world is celebrating and what we are celebrating intersect in a way that gives us an incredible opportunity as Christians. First of all, to understand the gift of Christmas, because it is more wondrous and more threatening than we realize. And secondly, to be able to give it to others at this moment of intersection with the world. We must examine the gift of Christmas. We must unwrap it. We must endeavor to understand it. And we must measure ourselves whether we are capable and willing to receive the true gift of Christmas. And so this series is all about looking into some of the scriptures. Today we're looking into a light has dawned. And each week we'll be looking into different scriptures and uncovering them, looking deeper into those things that are so often shared at Christmas time, so that by the time Christmas arrives, our theme for Christmas is let heaven and nature sing. And it is our heart that by the time we get to Christmas, we're not just sentimental, yes, praise jingle bells, but actually with heaven and nature, our hearts are alive to receive, understand, and sing out in glory and praise because we understand what the gift of Christmas is all about. A light has dawned. This scripture comes from Isaiah 9, and we start in verse 2 of Isaiah 9, and we read this. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. Every warrior's boot used in battle and every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning. It will be fuel for the fire. In other words, all the battles and all the wars will be over at this moment. Why is that? Because verse 6 says, for to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace, there will be no end. Those are quite some exalted titles for a young child, even for a king. They are exalted titles. And we need to look, just like I had to unwrap and dig into what I thought was an empty box in order to understand it. We need to look at the context. We need to understand a little bit more. The context of my brother's gift was, yes, I teased you. The empty box was intended as a tease, but I love you too. You've got to understand more. You've got to be able to go deeper to understand the context so that we can receive it in the way that it was intended. And if we look at the context of what Isaiah was a prophet, he was in the days of old and he was speaking to Israel. If we look at a bit of a timeline of Isaiah the prophet, there was a blessing of God that was coming. And that blessing of God was intended to come to Abraham and through Abraham, one man and his family to the earth. Abraham grew into the nation of Israel, and Israel failed to be those priests. They were given rules, they were given instructions on how to be priests to bring the blessing of God to the world, but they failed. And so God raised up a king. He said, perhaps if there is a king who is able to have a heart after God, that king would be able to, instead of the faithless people, he could be a faithful king that could bring God's blessing, that could bring his gift to the world. And that was David. And if you know the story of David, he was a man after God's own heart, and he loved God. He was such a good king, but he was not perfect. And his failure brought darkness into his land, and his life did not end up being that which could bring the light that God was looking to bring. And so Isaiah arrives. There have been a list of kings after David who have similarly been some good, some bad, but never one of them perfect. And Isaiah is aware that they are under attack. He predicts that in 10 years' time, which is when it happened, in 10 years' time after this prophecy, Assyria is going to come and attack the nation of Israel. And so he's speaking as a prophet to the kings of the land, and he's saying, please, we need to turn back to God. We need a king that is able to be like this, a mighty God, wonderful counselor, everlasting Father to his people, somebody who is able to bring peace. And this man Hezekiah is put on the throne as king, and Assyria does come 10 years later against the land. And when Assyria comes, Hezekiah, instead of counting on his own strength, he falls down on his knees and he lays it out before God, and he says, God, I need your help. And he makes the right choice. And the next morning, they wake up to discover the Assyrian army has been beset by plagues, and they've turned around and left. And Hezekiah has rescued his people. Is he the Prince of Peace? It wasn't long afterwards that another powerful empire, Babylon, came to ally themselves with Hezekiah. And Hezekiah, knowing that once he had trusted in God and God had come through for him, nonetheless found that quite a difficult faith journey. And it would be so much easier to trust in the firepower of Babylon. And Hezekiah, such a good king, fails to be perfect. And it is in this time that Isaiah is writing. First, will it be him? We need the light. We need to be able to rescue the people. The Prince of Peace. Hezekiah is on the throne. He fails. Isaiah is the one who confronts Hezekiah. And then, when they are both passed away, Babylon comes and takes over Israel. And the last thing that Isaiah writes is, we need a king that will be pierced for our transgressions. We need a king that will take upon him the punishment of our sin. We need a king that is willing to fight to the death for us and that will not fail when the going gets tough. That is the story of Isaiah. And when Jesus comes, we read in Matthew, who writes about Jesus, we read this, a remembering of the prophecy. Jesus, now it's in his time of ministry, and he withdraws into Galilee, which is the territory of the tribes of Zebulun and Naphtali, so that what was spoken by the prophet Isaiah might be fulfilled. We start now with what was the verse before the lights. I didn't read verse 1 of Isaiah 9, but it says this, the land of Zebulun and Naphtali, the way of the sea, Galilee of the Gentiles, the people dwelling in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. As we look at the scripture, have you ever wondered to yourself why the King of the Jews did not do most of his ministry in Jerusalem? Why did he do most of his ministry in Galilee? Galilee was northern Israel. It was not, as the scripture said, nothing good comes from Galilee. Why the region of Zebulun and Naphtali, where those tribes are, they lived in the region of Galilee. Why was it there that Jesus did most of his miracles, that Jesus did most of his ministry? Why did he go there? Let's look at a map. As you can see from that map, when the Syrian invaders came, the only way to come into Israel was through the north, because there was that big desert that protected them from the east. And so the only way to attack Israel was always from the north, coming down. Whether it was Assyria or whether it was Babylon, they always attacked from the north down. If we go to the next map, you'll see on the left, there is the whole of Israel with all of the colors. And right up north, I zoomed up on it on the right, the area of Naphtali and Zebulun, where those tribes are, that is Galilee. That big piece of water there, that is the Sea of Galilee. That is where there was the miraculous catch of fish. That is where Jesus walked on water. What is the significance for us? There had to be a place, that was the place that received most of the torment and punishment and attack that was because of the sin of the nation. It came through the land of Naphtali and Zebulun. It is that land that experienced the utter darkness. And so it is there that Jesus went to do most of his ministry and his miracles, because when Jesus comes into our lives, he understands that there are some people who suffer for their own sin and for the sin of their family and for the sin of the nation around them more than others. And it is to those people that Jesus comes first. In each of our lives, there are some areas that we suffer in more, areas where there's more pain, areas where we seem to suffer because of our own sin and the sin of our family and the sin of our nation and the sin of nations that fight against us. And it is to those areas that the light of Jesus comes first. He wants to reach you. He wants to touch you. And we say a light has dawned. A light has dawned in our areas of greatest darkness, of utter darkness, of suffering, of pain, because of our own sin and the sin of others. That is where the gift of Christmas comes. And so as we unwrap Christmas, I just want to look at 3 points. The first one is that when we unwrap Christmas, it is less sentimental than you think. If you think of that box, I thought it was all wrapping paper and ribbons. Sometimes we can think that Christmas is all jingle bells and Christmas trees, but it is less sentimental than you think. It is much more brutally real than you think. What do I mean by sentimental? Well, the definition of sentimental is this: exaggerated and self-indulgent feelings of affection or nostalgia. Self-indulgent feelings, it means to wrap up a gift with all ribbons and everything. It's more about the giver. I'm saying it's more about how amazing is my gift than actually, well, what is inside of it? And so sentimental love benefits the lover more than the beloved. If it's self-indulgent, if it's exaggerated, it's love that benefits the lover. Oh, look what I've done for you, more than the beloved. The gift of Christmas is not one of those gifts. It's not one of those gifts that you're going to put in the back of your cupboard and go, great, you ticked a box for giving me a gift. I've done jingle bells, the baby's in the manger, can we move on with our lives? It's much more realistic. It's much more real than that. One of the intersections between the Xmas festival and Christmas is Christmas lights. And Christmas lights are so beautiful. Everybody loves them. The lights in Durban. I want you to drive around. Go and see the lights in the city. Go and see the lights in Sunningdale. Go and see the lights that people put up in their houses. Put up lights in your own home. But those lights never work the year after. Have you ever noticed that? You buy them and they're so pretty. But you're lucky if they last the season of Christmas. They're certainly not going to be still going the next year. The New York Times says this about Christmas: the meaning of Christmas is that love will triumph and we will all be able to pull together to create a world of unity and peace. And thankfully, Hollywood backs up the New York Times with 1,000 Christmas movies in which you will be snowed in at the airport, but not to worry, somebody will love you enough to provide a taxi for you, and even though you will break down many times, you will get to your family, and there will be peace and unity and Christmas love. The spirit of Christmas will overcome. Brilliant. So great. The trouble is that once you've got to that beautiful family lunch that you killed yourself to get to, can you maintain family peace until the end of the lunch? Let alone January. Sentimental rubbish. I need more. There are many people who hate Christmas because of this, because they are so desperate for something real. They are so tired of sentimentality, and they want to know what the real gift of Christmas is. Can it last? Can we get out of the darkness for good and not just as long as my Christmas tree lights last for? Václav Havel was the first president of the Czech Republic, which basically means he took his country from socialism into capitalism and democracy. And even though he was somebody who really understood human ways of government, he also understood this, that the pursuit of the good life will not help humanity save itself, and nor is democracy alone enough. A turning to and seeking of God is needed. He went on to say the human race constantly forgets that he is not God. We can create systems of government, but what we really need is a Prince of Peace, one whose government will not leave, one who is able to bring peace that will last beyond 3 p.m. on Christmas Day. There was a philosopher, Bertrand Russell, who didn't pretend to know God, but he was humble enough to genuinely and honestly look at his own beliefs. And he explained it like this. He said, if you truly look at what science has to offer you, you have to understand that building your life on science is more purposeless and more void of meaning than I can explain. He said, if everything that is here had no intention, there was no vision for which we were created, and if everything we do, every act of heroism, every act of love, everything we build and create, every wonderful idea we have, if it is all going to come to nothing again, Then, he says this, only within the scaffolding of these truths, that it is nothing and meaningless, only on that firm foundation of unyielding despair, that's where the soul's habitation can be safely built. He understood that without God, even though he was without God, he was humble enough to see that despair was the only place that you could build your life. And so the New York Times, as we've seen, said the meaning of Christmas is that love will triumph and that we will be able to pull together to create a world of unity and peace. The truth of Christmas is this: things really are this bad, and we can't heal and save ourselves. Things really are this dark, and yet a light has dawned. There is hope. That's the realism of Christmas. It's the opposite of sentimentality. Are you willing to tear back the frills and ribbons and wrappings of Christmas and discover what's really inside? It's less sentimental than we think. And secondly, we need it more than we know. Darkness is represented in the Bible. It means evil. There is lots of evil that goes on in our world. And I think if we are honest, we understand that Jesus was born into a world of violence, injustice, refugees fleeing and having nowhere to stay, broken families, and bottomless grief. Jesus was born into a world like that. So was I. So were you. The chapter before Isaiah 9, that is this beautiful prophecy of a light that will dawn. Isaiah 8 speaks about what humans are trying to do to save themselves. It speaks about the mediums and the necromancers and the mystics and the human wisdom and the experts that we look to. And Isaiah 8 verse 22 says this: they'll look to the earth, but see only distress and darkness, the gloom of anguish. And they will be thrust into utter darkness. It's because our rescue is not here. We cannot find it. That is the darkness. It is not only evil, it is ignorance. Even if we want to be good and we want to bring light into our world, we don't know how to. We want to help. Hezekiah wanted to help. David wanted to help. And I think they're more equipped than I am. I want to help. But even ignorance is darkness. You see, when I say we need it more than we don't know what we don't know. And so when we're in darkness, we don't always know what we don't know. We don't know that we're not seeing correctly. And yet, I'm arguing with myself a little bit here and with my point, a deep sea creature that has no eyes and lives in the darkness is not missing anything. They don't wish they could see because they don't know any different. They don't know what they don't know. We also are similar but different in that we were created to see. And so even if we are born blind, we know that something is missing. So we do need it more than we know, but also there is a little bit of knowing inside of us. We also know that there must be something more. There is a darkness and there shouldn't be. There should be light. We should be living in a land where the Prince of Peace rules. We do understand that. Isaiah 9 verse 2, as we looked at previously, says a light has dawned. And if a light has dawned, the analogy, the similarity, the illustration that Isaiah is looking at is from the outside, like the sun. The sun comes from the outside and gives us everything we need for life. Without the sun, we cannot live. God is the same. The light that he brings us is the same. Without the light of the sun, we cannot see the truth. We're going to bump into things. We're going to misunderstand. The light of Jesus is the same. He brings the truth. The sun brings beauty into our world. It brings color into our world. It is scientifically proven that those who live in places where there is less sunlight are less joyful. Jesus is the same. He is beautiful in and of himself. And how will we get this light? Verse 6 says, unto us a child is born. Unto us a son is given. The child will bring the light. And he will look at those exalted names, Wonderful Counselor, names for a child, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. There's never been a king that could wear these titles. There's only been one, God, born into humanity, limiting himself to be present with us. This is not something that we can say we celebrate at Christmas. This is something that we stare at dumbstruck. In order for us to unwrap Christmas, we have to start here. Oh God, would you give me the revelation of your light? Would you help me to see Jesus, Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace, born, given to me, oh God. Would you open my eyes? Would you open my heart? Would you open my understanding? Would you give me light to see? I need it more than I know. Christmas is less sentimental than we think. We need it more than we know. But it's going to take more humility than we realize. Receiving my brother's gift and the amount of humility it took to say, thank you, I really needed this, even though I had nothing to give back, that's nothing compared to what we're going to need to do to receive the gift of Christmas. Have you ever been given a gift that was quite difficult to receive? And I don't mean like, oh, that's so generous, really, but more like, whoa, what are you trying to say? Consider the teacher who was given makeup foundation by her student. Thank you. Imagine this Christmas you receive a voucher to a slimming clinic, as well as a book on overcoming selfishness. If you truly receive these with gratitude, what you are saying is, thank you so much, because I really am fat and obnoxious. I receive these gifts, and I will take hold of them. They are gifts that you never want to have to receive. But once you realize your need for them, you might be able to be truly appreciative. But still, it will take humility. Consider the fact that you would never want to need to receive a heart transplant. And yet once you realize that you did, you'll need to be humble enough to be willing to receive that. Somebody else's life for yours. Some gifts require more humility than we realize. There has never been a gift that makes you swallow your pride to the depths that the gift of Jesus Christ requires us to do. Christmas, truly speaking, means that we are so lost, so unable to save ourselves, that nothing less than the death of the Son of God could save us. You are not somebody who can pull themselves together and live a moral and good life. Once you realize that that's true, will you be humble enough to receive the gift that Christmas offers? To receive the gift of Christmas, you have to admit that you're incapable of living a perfectly good life. And therefore, not only are you not able to save the world from darkness, but actually your lack of perfection means that you're a contributor to bringing darkness into this world. There are some gifts, friends, that we can receive standing up, like a gift of flowers when someone arrives at our home. There are some gifts that we need to sit down to receive because they need to be cradled more carefully. They need to be unwrapped more carefully. But there are some gifts that we can only receive on our knees. When a king has something to bestow on you, the appropriate way to receive it is on your knees. as He lays something on your head, something on your shoulders. You humble yourself to receive it. But when you get up again, you are infinitely more, infinitely different than you were before you humbled yourself to receive the gift. As we bring this to a close, there will be opportunities for you to come and kneel. You can kneel where you are. You can kneel at home. But will you be willing to receive the gift of the light that has dawned this Christmas, that is less sentimental than you think, that you need more than you know, a gift that's going to take more humility than you realize? As we unwrap Christmas over the next 6 weeks, and we end with "Let heaven and nature sing," there'll be a little gift for you on Christmas Day, but there's a gift for you today as well. There is a gift of this Christmas, of the light that has dawned, and a little gift, a little symbol as you leave today. There'll be something at the door for you, a little candle, and when you burn it, inside the candle, there'll be a message. And we're praying that you will be able to receive, starting today, as we unwrap Christmas, the depth, the richness, the beauty. I warned you, this is a gift more wondrous and more threatening than any you have ever received.